So this is my own result. Clearly shows it's on the Asp side. And this video is about my own special interests I had over the years. They have changed, some have stayed the same, and some have merged into other special interests, and this is what happens with associative thinking. You just connect the dots. You learn about one topic, you learn about another topic, and then suddenly you see all those crossovers between those. So that's how you gather more information on a former topic by connecting it to another one that also is related but stands on its own. And you can go on and on for years like that, learning and learning, and it's super interesting. Keeps you going. So you gather many files in your brain computer. The more you learn, the more you connect things. My first special interests were horses, and I was totally into them, like studying the breeds and how to look after them. I also could help at the stable where they had many horses. I know to this day in which order the horses were kept in those boxes. I still have that image in my head from above, like that. This was the stable I was helping out. So I learned everything: grooming the horses, cleaning out the stalls, yeah, everything. And that was really something that felt very good to me, even though I had some issues connecting to all the other teenage girls, but at least I could connect with the horses. And here Nora, she was a black horse, was my favorite. I also like Gentleness, a brown horse. And I looked after Georgina, also a brown horse. They asked me for one summer during summer holidays, so I was very happy to look after her. And Gaddafi was a really funny horse, white, very tall, little big man, was a bit difficult. He had some trauma in the past, but for riding he was great. And Water Gold was a black horse, English, very sensitive. Silver was a white horse, Indian Summer, brown horse. Black, of course, black horse, my gold a white horse. Ronka was a bit difficult. She had really some temper, but that was actually the owner's fault. They were the horses that came in and went out interchangeably. Sorbas, he was tricky, huge horse, and yeah, you never knew with him. And Natasha, she was a very, very beautiful horse, brown. But the owner also, he neglected her, and luckily she had a good carer. And Killian was the oldest horse in the stables, 25 years already. And Kimberly was a brown horse as well. And they were together, the same owner. And here was the saddle room for all those horses here. And there was a second floor where we stored the straw and hay. Yeah, and that was where I spent my free time, vacation afternoons, until I got my own horse to look after in another stable where there was not so many people, just 3 to look after 2 horses, and that was much better. So this was Jamaica, the one horse I looked after for a few years, and she was my best friend at the time. I really don't know what I would have done without her. I was a very confused teenager, and the love of horses got me through those difficult years when I felt depressed and had social anxiety, was extremely shy, selective mutism, all of that, and didn't know where to go next, what to do with my life. Yeah, it was a really difficult time. I felt so misunderstood, was struggling, suicidal, but I kept it a secret. Unfortunately, when I was working at the hospital at around age 21 to age 26, was about 5 years. Yeah, there I met somebody and I really didn't like her. I didn't like her at first. She was a stalker and just not leaving me alone. And since I was so socially naive, it really, I didn't know how to say no. I only learned that so many years later.
Many of my intelligent gender dysphoric clients, who would be referred to as twice exceptional, gifted and talented, and autistic or Asperger syndrome, experience existential dread, which is contributing to the confusion about how many things, other than their femaleness, that they're confused about. So confused about their femaleness, their androgyny or not feeling like either gender or both genders. They're confused about their place in society, their place in the world. And then there's the existential dread that waxes and wanes and comes and goes with being gifted. And so they're having to also deal with, from a very young age, things like what is the meaning of life, and makeup, and getting bullied because she didn't wear any makeup. She thought her sensory issues might go away if she transitioned. She also mentioned how much her alexithymia prevents her from discussing the topic with anyone. Her to the voices in their head, they're talking about their thoughts. So I call it like they have 100 browsers open in their brain and they're all talking at the same time. With one of these people, they're very good at what they do.
So once I learned about gaslighting, so many years later, I understood what had actually happened to me during this relationship and also during the years in the cult. So this developed into another special interest within a special interest. This was really a very interesting topic to dive in. How do those people operate? What is their pattern? And it's really good if you learn about this, so you will always recognize. It's like a fingerprint. It seems as if they have read all the same book. They behave in such similar ways. So you can always recognize that pattern whenever you see it. And then it's just ridiculous because you no longer fall for it. And it's your protection. It's important to know about this. I first went investigating trauma, then CPTSD, then narcissism, sociopathy, and their pattern, what they do, how they pull you in, love bomb you, and then at some point it's the complete opposite when they show their true face. But then when you want to get away from them, they try to hoover you back in. And that's a vicious cycle.
One of the traits that I want to talk about that can set you up is social naivety. And social naivety is being naive to social situations, not reading the intentions of others, and also tying in with social naivety can be having an idealistic view of the world, so that the world and people are good. And unfortunately, on Earth 1, as I call it, it is not like that here. There are people out there who are sheeps in wolves' clothing. They are. There's many of them. And so you've got to be aware that there are many people out there that are out there to take advantage of you. And not just you, they will try to take advantage of anyone they can. But your characteristics or your traits make you a very easy target. Okay, so make autistic people or Asperger's people targets for what the dark triad, and I'm just going to call them the dark triad, an excellent setup.
And she even kept coming to my flat where I was living at the time, ringing the doorbell, and I was hiding. I pretended to not be home, but then at work she would again stalk me. There was no social media yet. Thank goddess, because that would have been even worse. So it was just the obvious physical stalking that took place. And later, after the breakup, she kept calling me until I just changed my number. But since I was autistic, I had no clue how to deal with this stalking situation at the beginning, and I had no experience. This had never happened to me before. There was no file about this situation in my brain, so I had no idea what to do. So how do you react? And you don't know how to share it with another person who will be more experienced because of that problem. And me not being able to articulate what was going on. And then somehow I caved. I just didn't know what to do, and then I felt, yeah, we can try it. Before that, I had some short interaction with men, and I just didn't feel it was the big thing everybody was talking about. So that was another reason why I thought, oh, maybe I was gay. Okay, let's try that. Yeah, and we moved together after about 1 month. I didn't know her at all. I was too trusting, too naive, just feeling, oh, if we share the same interests, that's okay. And it turned out she just faked it to pull me in. That's what narcissists do. They do everything to make you believe that they are a great match. Yeah. Obviously, it didn't go so well. It was a disaster. So first I had this developmental trauma, then the trauma happened in the relationship, and then I felt it would be a good idea to move to another city and they offered me a job as well as housing, so I thought it was a good opportunity to get away from everything. Turned out it was a cult, and I didn't realize that for many years. For autistics, if something is structured, there are very clear rules, and there was celibacy, so I didn't care. For me, it was absolutely fine to follow those rules. At least I knew how to behave, and there was no pressure on socializing, rather the opposite. You should just be focused on the guru and be devoted to him and nobody else. So actually this is ideal for autistics to get in trouble. Yeah, and then there was trauma happening because I was autistic and didn't know. So my behavior was different. At school, I always had trouble to socialize. I wasn't interested in the other kids. I just wanted to be with my books later on when I could read and be occupied with my special interest, which was horses at the time. So this was always the one thing that made it difficult to connect to people, and that's why I fell for this stupid relationship, didn't see the red flags, and that's why I fell for the cult. And because I was misunderstood, teachers thought I was lazy, a dreamer, not interested. But actually, many things I just didn't understand. I had trouble with math because I'm a visual thinker. I was struggling. I didn't get the picture, and teachers failed to understand me. I was also depressed at school because my parents were fighting, and my only way out was to disassociate, go into my own world in my own head. And I was really good at it. I wouldn't even hear when people were calling me. I was so deep immersed in my own thoughts.
People involved in cults being taken advantage of by people who have come up to them and told them that, there's this great group of people and we do this or we do that. That's how the women that I've talked to have ended up being in cults or found themselves in cults.
Anyway, so after all that shit, and after I had left the cult in 2012, I read all I could about cults, so it developed in a special interest. And then I learned that it's always a very similar makeup. It's a certain pattern. They pull you in and then they keep you occupied, exhausted, so your brain shuts down. You just operate like a machine, basically, and that prevents you from thinking clearly and questioning. And you are so brainwashed at some point. That's like a door you enter, and it's very hard to get out of that room once you're there. And then if you question, you are gaslighted or punished, shunned. And at that point you have given up everything. You have no longer any friends on the outside. So you are very isolated. So of course you want to remain in the cult. That's all you have. So you behave, of course. But for me, at some point, I didn't care anymore. I just saw our crumble and disintegrate. I therefore had to get out, no matter what. Start all over. Yeah, I had to get out. I just saw that the leader was totally pretending to be what he said he was. Unfortunately, because I was still not aware who I was. I was autistic. I felt lost. I still felt like an alien. After that, I unfortunately went right ahead into another cult, because also I had a friend who was a former member of the cult I had left. So we both kind of supported each other, but she introduced me to the New Age starseed belief. And it made sense to me. I felt alien. Of course, I was a starseed. So for a few years I was caught up in this, but luckily not really following any particular leader, but just more in general. But you are so caught up in that idea of not being human but alien, and that's a whole other belief system, and it really will mess with your head all over again. So I pulled out of that, and the last thing that also interfered with me being who I was, it was veganism. So around the same time I got interested in all that New Age shit, I also went vegan, but It was rather more for health reasons, and it's intricately connected to the vegan belief that if you eat high frequency foods, you will ascend, and therefore you should not eat any animal foods. So you see how that will lead you to eat only plants and fruits. And at some point I even went fruitarian. So that was that experience. Yeah, and maybe it was a blessing in disguise. My body, of course, didn't tolerate that for too long, and then I finally realized I had to eat meat again. And ironically, this is where the true awakening happened. Your brain needs meat and animal fat, and then it will function properly. Your body will heal. And you will be as clear-headed as it gets. You will no longer have that stupid, annoying brain fog. Your mood will improve. You will feel happier and mellow, not so irritated and angry all the time. Nor will you feel depressed, because your body gets what it needs. Our bodies evolved like that, through eating animal foods. And you become as present as it gets by eating meat and fat, not by avoiding it. And that bullshit about low frequency and high frequency foods, that's a complete mindfuck. I believe that the whole New Age cult was designed to control people, to keep them docile and brain fogged, basically. So, how do you achieve that? Make them eat lots of carbs, lots of veggies with those plant toxins, lots of fruits with fructose to destroy the liver, and call those foods high-frequency foods that will help you reach ascension. I really fell for this. Again, that trust got me in trouble many times. And therefore, it's very good to dive into those rabbit holes. You need to be informed and also experiment with yourself. Trust your body, not what other people say. And you will see for yourself the difference. That was quite a revelation, actually. As soon as I started to eat meat, about 2 months of adaptation suddenly all that chronic pain I had for several months or almost a year that didn't go away with anything I tried, just by eating meat alone, very clean diet, all that pain disappeared, just like that, nothing else. So yeah, I can only recommend it. Try and see what happens. And I learned how powerful eggs are, how healthy. I learned about oxalate, and then that was it. I immediately stopped eating all those high oxalate foods, in particular spinach. Autistics very often also do stimming with foods, and for me, spinach had a special texture. It was soft. It wasn't the taste, it was the texture. And that's why I ate it, not knowing it was so high in oxalate. And I basically poisoned my body. So I'm really happy that I saw a reason and went carnivore to heal my body from everything. Yeah, and then there has always been that special interest in nutrition from at least age 19. From then on, I started experimenting with different ways of eating. And after I went carnivore, this is how it felt like. And I started investigating all those different things like food allergies, because I knew by that point that my body showed severe reactions to casein, lactose, whey, maltodextrin, gluten, soy, and many other things. And recently I learned about histamine intolerance, which is another very interesting topic. So you just dive into those different rabbit holes, keeps your life entertaining. So you see, this is just one category, but it is connected to so many other topics. Health. And also psychology, because if you eat well, you feel way better. If you eat crap, you may have depression because of what you eat, because your gut is messed up. So since I transitioned to carnivore from veganism, my mood has improved so much. It's really amazing. That's like day and night.
In terms of interest, as a very general rule, these often tend to be more people-based, or certainly people subject-based. So things like history, things like genealogy, things like self-help, things like psychology, animals. I've met a number of women who've become counsellors and therapists and psychologists because they've spent the whole of their lives studying people. They can't necessarily relate to their clients on an intuitive, emotional level, but they're very good at understanding what's going on and being able to work with people on a much more cognitive, logical level. So it's been a life's work for these girls and these women to work all of this stuff out.
The interest of the girls, again, this is something in terms of diagnosis that people often miss. Because if you say to a little autistic girl, what do you like? And she says cats, you think, oh, that's fairly normal and fairly typical. And it's only when you ask the right questions that you find that she can list every breed of cat in the universe, that she has 423 cats sitting on her windowsill, all in colour coordinated order. They all have histories, names, personalities, entire backstories relating to each one of them. It's not the topic, it's the intensity that defines something from just being something you like to something that potentially, with a whole bunch of other stuff, of course, fits into this potential autistic criteria. The girls often like animate things, so animals, horses, people, celebrities, relatives, people down the road, and often have this enormous knowledge base. In traditional autism, it was all about objects, trains, dinosaurs, space, history. In female autism, it's not always about objects, it's often about people or animals of some description. Where we used to call the boys little professors, we call the girls little psychologists because they study people. They watch people. There are surprising, given the nature of empathic understanding and support, there are a surprising number of adult women who are counsellors and psychologists and vets because their interest has taken them into those kind of fields. We never would have thought that autistic women would become counsellors. We would have thought that that just wasn't their kind of thing. It's too much about empathy. It's too much about putting yourself in someone else's shoes. It's too much about kind of understanding somebody else's emotional perspective. What a lot of the women say that have got these professions is that they don't do that. They listen to the problem and they find solutions. So they're actually kind of studying this person as though they were an object almost, rather than emotionally becoming involved in the situation. They're looking at it slightly detached and saying, right, what needs to happen here? And often very effective at doing those sorts of jobs. The interests of adult women are things like crafts. There are huge numbers of craftswomen. I think that craft is female engineering for autistic women. Asperger syndrome used to be called engineer's disease. We've always had this sense that people on the autistic spectrum are good at the precision, the accuracy, the systemizing of objects, of materials, of data. And it seems to me, obviously a lot of women also go into data and mathematics and science, but some of them also go into craft, which again looks pretty normal. You're sitting there knitting. That's pretty normal kind of thing. What we don't know is that at home you've got 2,321 balls of wool that are all monitored, logged, data processed and on a spreadsheet. And that you know exactly how heavy each one of them is and how many stitches you need to perform your next task. Again, it's about intensity, it's about experimentation, it's about precision, and the stuff often that women come up with is really astonishing.
Those are some of my Celtic knot mandalas. Have been doing them since about age 21. This one was a gift for somebody. This one was just some idea I experimented with. Close up. Then I love doing my own cosmetics and my muscle joint cream, which looks like that in its finished form. At home I have endless projects, sewing those curtains, only to have some change once in a while, redecorating my flat. I love doing those crystal necklaces and bracelets. Tiger's eye, fluorite.
I worked with a woman who made like purses and wallets and things, but out of tartan. She was Scottish. She knew every single thing about every single tartan that exists. So there's a depth of interest and knowledge there, rather than just that superficial, oh, I like knitting. No, it's something bigger and more precise and more special within there. But something about creating a tangible thing at the end of it is so common to hear girls and women talk about making stuff, baking, jewellery, card making, you name it. They love just making stuff. But that looks kind of normal, so it's just the intensity that we have to kind of worry about. In terms of this kind of restricted behaviour, again on the diagnostic criteria, some of the things that we might kind of consider to be problematic in males, we actually see as positives in girls. She's helpful, she's particular, she's a perfectionist, she stays in at break time and she tidies up all of the boxes and organises them all into colour order. How is that a problem? Actually, she's quite cleverly getting out of going into the playground at break time by appearing helpful. Because probably the playground is a nightmarish experience for her. And we see that shutdowns are much more common than meltdowns in girls. So whereas the boys go out, the girls go down and in. And so you're not really seeing any of that kind of stuff. The psychology stuff also carries on into adulthood. So quite a number of women that I meet are really into murderers and crime because it's psychology. How do people work? There's this lifelong study of trying to work out how do people work. I need to know how this is, and I'm going to study it for a very, very long time.